That day when I was changing my clothes, she came in. You don't believe what happened afterwards. I had always known something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Not at first. The strange looks, the quiet moments, the lingering touches that had started happening more often. It was all so subtle, I convinced myself I was imagining it. After all, I was the one who had changed. I was the one who felt distant. At least that's what I told myself. It was only after she moved in that I began to feel it. The shift between us, this growing weight that seemed to hover in the space between me and my stepdaughter, Lily. Lily had come to stay after her parents' separation, a temporary arrangement that stretched longer than either of us had expected. And, if I'm being honest, neither of us had thought it would become what it did. Lily was beautiful. She was my stepdaughter. But the truth was, I had never really seen her before, at least not like this. There was something in the way she carried herself, her grace, the way her hair would fall across her shoulders when she moved, or the softness in her eyes when she glanced at me. I had thought I could ignore it, tell myself it was nothing more than a passing fancy, the natural attraction between two women who shared a roof. But each passing day made it harder to pretend. Each time she smiled at me, each time she walked into a room where I was, it got harder to deny it. It wasn't until that evening, after a long day spent in separate corners of the house, that the first real crack in our carefully curated walls appeared. I had just finished a long, frustrating phone call with my business partner and was pacing the living room, the adrenaline of the call still lingering in my chest, when Lily appeared in the doorway. Her presence was like a spark to dry tinder, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. She was dressed simply, a loose t-shirt and jeans, but the way she looked at me made my stomach tighten. It was the way she always looked at me now, differently. Almost like she was trying to figure something out, or maybe like she knew I was trying to figure her out. "Sophie," she said, her voice soft, a little hesitant. "Are you okay?" I swallowed hard, trying to shake the discomfort that had suddenly settled in my chest. "I'm fine. Just busy. You know how it is." She nodded, her lips pulling into a soft smile. But there was something in her eyes, a flicker of something deeper, something I couldn't quite name. She lingered by the doorway, her gaze never leaving mine, until it became too much to bear. "Can I get you anything?" I asked, my voice a little sharper than I meant it to be, trying to break the moment. But she didn't leave. She didn't even move, and that was when I realized how different everything had become. "You look, I don't know, tired, I guess." I laughed nervously. "You think I look tired?" She shrugged, her gaze dropping to the floor for a moment, and then back to me. "Yeah, I can tell. You've been stressed, huh?" I nodded. But it wasn't just the stress I was feeling. There was something else, something unspoken, and for some reason, in that moment, I couldn't stop myself from saying it. "I don't know if I can keep pretending like this." Her brows furrowed in confusion, the look in her eyes darkening for just a second. Pretending everything's fine. Pretending there's no tension, no feeling between us. The words were out before I could stop them, and once they hung in the air, I wished I could take them back. But they were already there, already pulling us into something I wasn't sure I was ready for. Her eyes widened, a flicker of something in her expression, surprise, maybe even shock. But then she stepped closer, her movements slow, deliberate, as though testing the waters between us. "You feel it too?" I nodded, my throat tight, unable to form words. The silence stretched, hanging thick with unspoken words. And then, without thinking, I did something I immediately regretted. I took a step toward her. She didn't move away. In fact, she took a step closer to me, her breath catching in her throat as if we were both caught in some kind of invisible current pulling us together. "I didn't know how to tell you," I whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. Lily looked up at me, her face inches from mine now. "Tell me what?" I could feel her heartbeat as she stood so close, and the heat of her body radiated against me. I was shaking, my fingers trembling at my sides, but I couldn't pull away. "I don't know," I said quietly, "but I can't ignore it anymore." Her breath hitched, and I realized I had just crossed a line. The line I never intended to cross. It wasn't just physical anymore, it was everything. And the realization made my heart race, the intensity of it nearly suffocating me. Lily's lips parted, and I was sure she was about to say something. But before she could, I heard a door creak behind us. The sound sliced through the tension like a knife, breaking the spell that had been cast between us. I pulled back immediately, my breath shallow, my pulse racing. I need some air, I stammered, my hands trembling as I tried to steady myself. But before I could turn away, Lily reached out, her hand brushing against my arm. "Don't go," she whispered. And in that moment, I realized this was only the beginning. The evening after that moment, after the touch that I couldn't forget, things between Lily and I grew heavier, more charged. I knew that what we had shared, however brief, however fleeting, had opened a door between us, one I wasn't sure I could close. I hadn't seen her since, but I felt her presence everywhere, in the corners of the house, in the spaces where silence used to feel comforting, but now only felt suffocating. It was as though she was always just a step away, just out of reach, her eyes always watching me, waiting for me to make the next move. Or perhaps she was waiting for me to stop pretending. I wasn't sure how to navigate it. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to. The next morning, I found myself in the kitchen, my hands shaking slightly as I prepared breakfast. I told myself I was just being paranoid. There was no reason to feel like the house was about to implode, no reason for my heart to be racing every time I heard her footsteps in the hallway. But then, just as I was putting the last plate on the table, she appeared in the doorway. "Lily!" The moment I saw her, a strange wave of relief flooded me, relief that she was here, that this was still real, but also something darker, something more dangerous. Her eyes flickered to mine, and I could feel the heat between us, thick and undeniable. But neither of us spoke. She just stepped further into the room, her movements so graceful it was almost unsettling. "You need help?" she asked quietly, her voice soft, like she was walking on fragile ground. I shook my head, trying to keep my tone casual. "No, I'm good, thanks." She stood there, lingering by the doorway, and for a moment, neither of us knew what to do with the space between us. I couldn't keep pretending things hadn't changed, and I could see she was struggling with it, too. "Lily," I started, my voice cracking as I tried to find the right words. "About last night." She looked up at me then, her gaze intense, unreadable. "Yeah?" "I don't know what that was," I admitted, feeling the weight of the words as they left my mouth, "but I don't think I can just forget it." She didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on me, steady and unyielding. "I don't want to forget it," she said softly, her words hanging in the air like a challenge. A wave of heat washed over me at her admission, and I was caught between two truths. I shouldn't be feeling this way, and yet every fiber of my being was telling me I wanted more. I should have walked away. I should have told her this was wrong, that we needed to stop. But instead, I did nothing. I just stood there, paralyzed by my own desires, watching her as she moved closer. Her hand brushed against mine as she reached for the orange juice on the counter, the fleeting contact sending a shock of electricity up my arm. "I don't know what to do with this," I whispered, my breath coming faster now. Lily paused, her fingers lingering on the glass, her body barely touching mine. "I don't either." The tension between us was so palpable it hurt. Every instinct told me to pull away, to end this before we both got tangled in something neither of us could handle. But when she turned her face toward me, her eyes dark and filled with something I couldn't deny, I felt my resolve crumble. "I don't think I can pretend anymore," I said, my voice barely audible. Lily's breath caught, and I saw her eyes flicker to my lips. "You don't have to," she whispered back. It was only a whisper, but it felt like a plea that was slowly unraveling the threads of my self-control. I could feel her heart beating, in sync with mine, the thrum of it so loud in my ears that I couldn't focus on anything else. Before I could stop myself, I stepped closer to her, the space between us closing in an instant. Her breath was warm against my skin, and the smell of her shampoo, her perfume, the faint scent of her skin filled my senses, making my head spin. I could see the way her chest rose and fell, the pulse in her neck, and I realized I was no longer looking at my stepdaughter. I was looking at a woman who had become my obsession, and then, without thinking, I reached out, cupping her face in my hands, and I kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, a silent exploration of something neither of us was ready to face. But as her lips parted slightly and I deepened the kiss, I knew there was no turning back. I felt the warmth of her body against mine, the way she responded, the way she melted into me, and everything I had been trying to ignore came crashing down all at once. This was wrong. I knew that. But in that moment, nothing else mattered. I pulled away slowly, breathing heavily, my hands trembling. We stood there for a moment, both of us lost in the silence that followed. Lily's eyes were wide, her lips swollen from the kiss, her chest rising and falling with quick breaths. Sophie, she whispered, her voice shaky. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? I shouldn't have done that, I murmured, my voice thick with regret. She shook her head. I don't think you understand. I don't want you to stop. My pulse hammered in my ears, and I could feel my body reacting to the heat of her words. This was dangerous, reckless. We could both lose everything if anyone found out. But there was something in the air, in the way she looked at me, that told me it was too late. We had crossed a line, and we both knew it, and now we were trapped. The days that followed felt like they stretched on forever, each one laden with tension, with something unspoken hanging between Lily and me. The kiss, the one we both tried to pretend didn't happen, loomed over everything. It was as if the very air in the house had shifted, heavy with the weight of what we had shared, what we were sharing, even if neither of us acknowledged it aloud. I tried to go about my daily life, focusing on the mundane, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. But it was hard to pretend everything was fine when every glance, every accidental touch between us felt like it was loaded with meaning. I couldn't stop thinking about her, about how soft her lips had been against mine, how her hands had trembled when she touched me, how her body had responded to mine. And every time I saw her, that same pull, that same desire gripped me, making it hard to breathe. But we didn't talk about it. Not openly, not in words. That was the unspoken rule we had created for ourselves. We avoided the topic, avoided each other's eyes when the tension grew too thick, but underneath it all, we both knew. We weren't fooling anyone, least of all ourselves. It was late one evening when the truth finally became impossible to ignore. I was sitting on the couch wrapped in a blanket reading a book. My mind was fuzzy from the exhaustion of the week, my body aching with the constant, subtle desire that never seemed to leave me. I thought I was alone in the living room, but when I looked up, I saw Lily standing in the doorway, her figure silhouetted against the dim light of the hallway. For a moment, neither of us moved. It was like the world held its breath, waiting for one of us to make the first move. Her eyes met mine, and for the briefest of moments, I saw something there, a longing, a hunger. She wanted this as much as I did. I knew it, and I knew she knew it too. I set the book down, my heartbeat increasing with each passing second. The silence between us was thick, like a living thing pressing in from all sides. Lily didn't speak at first. She just stood there, watching me with a gaze that was too intense, too focused, to be ignored. And then, without a word, she crossed the room, moving toward me with slow, deliberate steps. My breath caught in my throat as she knelt down beside the couch, her face now inches from mine. I could feel the warmth of her body, the heat radiating from her skin, and for a moment, I thought I might lose control right then and there. She reached out, her fingers grazing the edge of my blanket. "Sophie," she whispered, her voice like silk. "I can't keep pretending." I swallowed hard, my pulse pounding in my ears. The words were there, waiting on the tip of my tongue, the words I had been so afraid to say, but I couldn't speak. I couldn't form the words to make it stop, to push her away. Instead, I did the opposite. I leaned in, closing the space between us, and I kissed her again. This time, there was no hesitation, no testing the waters, no holding back. I kissed her like I had been starving for it, and in a way, I had been. She responded instantly, her hands moving to my shoulders, pulling me closer. Her body was warm, so warm against mine, and I could feel her breath on my lips, shaky, desperate. The kiss deepened, and I felt myself falling into her, falling into the undeniable pull that had always been there, but was now impossible to ignore. When we finally pulled away, both of us breathless, I was left in a haze. My head was spinning, my body trembling with need, with everything I had tried to suppress, but now there was no escaping it. Lily's eyes were dark, filled with something raw and unfiltered. "I don't care if this is wrong," she said, her voice low and breathy. "I don't care anymore." The words echoed in my head. I don't care anymore. She wasn't afraid, she wasn't holding back, but I was. "I can't." My voice faltered as I tried to find the word. "We can't. This isn't just about us. It's about everything. About the mess we'll create, the consequences. It's too much." But as I said it, I felt the weight of those words, and they felt hollow, because deep down I knew that this was about us, and the consequences, though real, felt secondary to what I was feeling in this moment. Lily's gaze softened, and she gently cupped my cheek. "Then stop me," she whispered, her fingers tracing the line of my jaw. I didn't say anything, because in that moment, I realized I didn't want her to stop. I pulled her back toward me, our lips meeting again in a kiss that was desperate, needy, unrestrained. My hands found their way to her body, tracing the curves I had dreamed of for days. My skin burned wherever she touched me, and I could feel her breath hitching against my mouth as her hands roamed over me, exploring. I knew we were crossing a line, but the truth was I didn't care. I didn't care anymore. The world outside seemed to disappear, the weight of it lifting from my shoulders. The only thing that mattered now was her. The way her body felt against mine. The way she kissed me like she had been waiting for this moment just like I had. She moved on top of me, straddling my lap, and I groaned at the feel of her against me. I could feel the heat between us growing with each passing second, and I was helpless to stop it. But then, just as quickly as it had started, she pulled away, her eyes searching mine for something. A warning, a reason to stop, but I wasn't ready to stop. Not yet. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice shaky as if she was unsure if she could go any further. I met her gaze, my heart racing in my chest. "I don't know," I whispered, "but I don't want to stop." And with that, she kissed me again. The night stretched out, stretching me in ways I never thought possible. Every breath between us felt like a promise, unspoken, yet clear. The kiss, the touch, the heat, everything had led to this moment. This crossing of a line neither of us seemed ready to retract. But as the fog of desire started to lift, reality came crashing back. I lay there, tangled in Lily's arms, the space between us still charged with the electric pulse of what we had just shared. My breath was uneven, my thoughts still in a daze, but something inside me, something grounded, something rational, began to stir. What were we doing? I shifted slightly, pulling away enough to look at her, my heart racing with the intensity of it all. I could feel the weight of everything I had tried to avoid settling on my chest. Lily's eyes met mine, searching, waiting for me to speak, to break the silence that hung in the air like a fragile thread. I didn't know what to say. The words that came to my mind felt too heavy, too full of consequence. "We can't do this." But saying that would mean accepting something I wasn't ready to face. This is wrong. But was it? Lily's fingers brushed against my cheek, pulling me back from the storm of my thoughts. "Sophie," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "I know this isn't easy, but I can't pretend this doesn't feel right. Not anymore." Her words pierced through me like a sharp wind, cutting through the doubt and uncertainty I had been hiding behind. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting her touch anchor me, and I fought to push down the tidal wave of conflicting emotions rising within me. We had crossed a line. That much was undeniable. But did that make it wrong? Was this a mistake? Was it really? I opened my eyes to find Lily watching me, her expression tender but laced with a trace of vulnerability. There was no judgment in her gaze, only understanding. A shared recognition that we had both let go of something, allowed ourselves to dive into the unknown. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice barely more than a whisper. "I don't know how to handle this. I don't know if we should be doing this." Lily's lips curved into a soft, reassuring smile, her fingers gently brushing my hair away from my face. "I know," she murmured. "I'm scared too. But I don't want to pretend anymore. Not when it feels like this." I took a deep breath, searching her eyes for something, anything, to give me the strength to do what was right. But I couldn't find it. All I found was the same longing that had been there from the start, and it mirrored my own. "I should stop you," I said, more to myself than to her. "But I'm not sure I can. I don't know how to walk away from this." Lily didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned in, her lips brushing against my forehead in a soft, tender kiss. "I'm not asking you to walk away," she whispered. "I'm just asking you to be with me, here, now." And in that moment, I felt the world shift. I had spent so much of my life holding on to control, to boundaries that kept me safe, that kept me from feeling too much. But being with Lily was like stepping into the unknown, surrendering to something that both terrified and exhilarated me. I couldn't stop the way my heart raced when she touched me. I couldn't stop the way my body responded to her presence, to the pull that had always been there, lurking beneath the surface. But could I let go completely? I wanted to. I wanted to let myself be with her, to let myself be vulnerable, to not fear what this could mean. But my mind was still fighting, still trapped in the weight of everything that could go wrong. Lily must have sensed my hesitation because she pulled back slightly, her gaze soft and understanding. "I'm not going to force you, Sophie," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "But I don't want to hide from this anymore. I don't want to regret what could have been." The words struck deep. Regret. I hadn't allowed myself to think about the possibility of regret, of consequences. All I had focused on was the moment, the intensity of it. But deep down, I knew what Lily was saying was true. If we stopped now, would I regret it? Would she? I searched her face, the raw honesty in her eyes, making it impossible to look away. In that moment, I knew the answer wasn't as simple as yes or no. It was messy, complicated, just like everything else between us. "I don't know how to stop," I whispered, my hands trembling as I reached for her, tracing the curve of her jaw, the line of her neck. "But I don't want to. I don't think I can." Lily's breath hitched, her chest rising and falling with the same urgency that pulsed between us. "Then don't," she said, her voice low and steady. "Let's not stop." And with that, the tension in the air finally snapped. The uncertainty faded into something more. I pulled her closer, my body trembling against hers as I kissed her, the soft press of our lips igniting something new, something raw. There were no more words, no more hesitation, just the desperate need to feel everything, each touch, each breath, like it was the only thing that mattered. When we broke away again, I could feel the heat of our shared desire, the electricity between us still crackling in the air, and yet I knew something had changed. We hadn't just crossed a line, we had destroyed it, and neither of us seemed to want to rebuild it. It's strange the way a moment can change everything. One kiss, one touch, one word. It feels like a small thing, an insignificant thing, until it isn't. And then you're left standing in the aftermath, wondering how you got there, wondering how much of yourself you left behind. In the process, I lay there, tangled in the sheets, my breath still heavy from the storm we'd weathered together. My heart hammered in my chest, not from desire this time, but from the sudden weight of reality crashing down on me. It felt like the world had shifted, and I couldn't quite find my footing. Lily's presence was still warm beside me, her arm draped across my waist, her fingers lightly tracing circles on my skin. I could hear her breathing softly, the steady rhythm that had been so soothing earlier now somehow unsettling in its quiet. We hadn't talked since we crossed that last line. We hadn't needed to. The silence between us had been full of unspoken understanding, of a shared acknowledgement that this was dangerous, that we had just stepped into something we couldn't come back from. But now, that silence felt different. Now it was heavy with the weight of consequences. I turned toward her, my fingers trembling slightly as I pushed a lock of hair from her face, studying her expression. She was beautiful, serene in a way that made my heart ache, even as my mind screamed at me to stop, to walk away from this before it got any worse. But I knew I couldn't. We both knew we were in too deep. Lily opened her eyes slowly, her gaze meeting mine with a tenderness that made my chest tighten. For a moment, neither of us spoke. There were no words for this. No easy way to explain how we had gotten here, how we had let ourselves slip past the point of no return. "Do you think we can stop?" I whispered, my voice barely audible in the quiet room. My throat was tight, the words leaving a bitter taste behind, but they needed to be said. Because as much as I wanted this, I didn't know how to stop myself from fearing the consequences. Lily didn't answer immediately. She just watched me, her eyes searching mine as if she were looking for something I didn't even understand yet. And when she finally spoke, her voice was soft, yet certain. "I don't think we can," she said, her fingers gently brushing against my cheek. "I don't think I want to." Her words hit me like a shockwave, but they also gave me a strange sense of relief. She was as lost in this as I was. She didn't want to stop either, and I felt the truth of that in the way her body responded to mine, in the way she held me as if I were the only thing keeping her grounded. But there was still that nagging voice in the back of my mind, the voice that reminded me of everything we stood to lose. I wanted to believe this could be something beautiful, something worth fighting for. But how could we make that happen when we were standing on a cliff, looking down at a world that could break us apart in an instant? I shifted slightly, pulling away just enough to look at her more clearly. I needed to know what this was, what we were doing, because deep down I knew it wasn't just about the passion, it was about something more complicated, something darker. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Lily," I whispered, my voice shaking. "What are we doing?" She didn't flinch. Instead, she met my gaze head-on, her eyes dark and full of something I couldn't name. Maybe desire, maybe fear. Or maybe it was just the overwhelming need to keep going, to keep this connection alive no matter the cost. "We're crossing a line," she said quietly, her hand cupping my face. "And I don't think either of us can stop. Not now." My pulse raced at her words, a thrill of fear and excitement flooding my veins. I knew she was right. Once we had crossed this threshold, there was no turning back. We were in this together, for better or for worse. But could we be in this together? I thought about the people we were hurting, how everything we were doing was a betrayal of trust. I thought about the consequences, the fallout that would inevitably follow when everything we'd been hiding came to light. But despite the doubts swirling in my head, my body told me something else. It told me to stay, to keep feeling, to keep exploring this thing between us that felt like it was alive. My hands found her waist again, pulling her closer, needing the closeness, the connection that had become an anchor in the storm. She didn't resist. Instead, she kissed me, soft and slow, as if this moment, this fragile, dangerous moment, was something she wanted to hold on to for just a little longer. I kissed her back, my fingers threading into her hair, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I stopped thinking. I stopped trying to rationalize everything. I stopped worrying about the consequences. I stopped pretending like I had control over this. Because in that moment, all I could focus on was the way she made me feel, alive, wanted, and like I mattered. Lily pulled away slowly, her lips brushing against mine one last time before she looked at me with something akin to sadness in her eyes. "We can't go back," she whispered. "We can't undo what we've done." I nodded, my chest tight, the weight of her words pressing down on me. She was right. There was no going back. But somehow, I didn't care. The air between us had thickened, the tension building to a point where it felt like we were teetering on the edge of something much bigger than either of us had anticipated. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know what consequences we'd have to face, but as Lily held me, her warmth enveloping me like a blanket, I knew one thing for sure. We couldn't stop now. We were already too far gone. And I didn't think either of us wanted to. And tell me what we can do now in the comments.